Hey, everybody, it's your old pal Tom here on the Tom Gulley Show. Let me tell you about Charles Manson. Let me tell you, Jack, I can take my fingernail and conquer the world, Jack. I can kill you with a thought. My eyebrow has a universe in it, Jack. Look, I'm going to tell you about Charles Manson, okay? And I don't mind telling you about Charles Manson. I really don't. It's fine. Happy to tell you about Charles Manson. But here's the thing about me telling you about Charles Manson. Charles Manson, look, he was just kind of misunderstood. No, I'm kidding. There's reasons Charles Manson was the way that he was. There's good reason. I'm saying you don't have to forgive him or let him off the hook for any of this, right? You don't have to do that. But there's good reasons. And then there's things he did that didn't make things any easier. And I tell you all that and things that are going to blow your mind, as usual, with all these stories that I tell you about this stuff. There's things that you're going to go, what? Anyway, but the thing is, I'm going to tell you about some interviews that he did, some famous interviews along the way when people would finally get permission and that he would even agree to them, because he didn't really agree to a lot of them. And I'm riveted by those. Just the way he talks. No, look, I'm not one of these people that would be, mollified by his silver-tongued deviltry, but just the way listen, Jack, I can turn a paperclip into you know what I mean? I just, I got a balloon that tells me stories, Jack. It's just the stuff he would say. So I'm going to do all that. Oh, by the way, a little later on in the show, I'm going to pin the link so that anybody I could do that right now, as a matter of fact. I like to get ahead of steam going. I'll do it right after I play the song. This is our cold open, by the way. We do it for our audio podcast listeners. And, it's just so they know there's going to be a podcast coming, because I got to play a little bit of music to let people, file in to our YouTube chat room and create that interactive experience that we're known for. And then after, or maybe during the song, during the song's the time to do it, I will pin the link to the top of the page. So, and, I see in my chat room somebody wants to get banned. That's interesting. It's kind of early for somebody to want to get banned. But, that's okay. Oh, I just meant to put him in a timeout. Dang on it. I wonder how that happened. I got to hide that. That makes me mad. Oh, no, it's just got them timed out. I don't know how long it times them out for. See, on YouTube, it lets me pick how long they're timed out for. It doesn't let me do that here. What a bunch of hooey. Anyway, so yeah. But I will put the link up here shortly, and then people can interrupt me while I'm telling this story, which they shouldn't do, because I'm trying to plow through it. There's a lot. And I can tell you this as well. A week from today, I will do the story of the Tate LaBianca killings. Now, that is a lot bigger of a story than just Charles Manson. But Charles Manson by itself is a big story. But the Tate LaBianca thing is so involved. And, yeah. Listen, Jack. They let me out of here, I'll kill everybody, Jack. With my mind. Hear me, Jack? Always says Jack. I want to tell you something, Jack. All right. I got to play the song. And while I'm playing the song, I'll pin the link. And then, because I can't pin the link in StreamYard. I got to go on YouTube. And this is going to be a wild one, too. Because he did a lot of stuff that wasn't. Anyway. And then let me tell you, Jack, about Charles. Oh, I forgot. I got a thing for the stereo on the audio on this. And then I'll tell you about Charles Manson.
Passing by an exit, like reflections low, you're leaving behind what you've come to know. Turn that dial as the white lines roll. Turning, the sun begins to rise. The lights ahead are burning as you rub your tired eyes. Turn up that radio as the lines start to slur, and just enjoy
Hey, everybody, what's going on? What's hot? What's hip? What's happening? What is shaking? Let me tell you about Charles Manson, Jack. I'm going to set you straight, mister. I can turn your brain into a bug with a balloon, Jack. Anyway, he said some weird things. Can we all just agree that he said some strange things? Anyway, hey, do me a favor. Like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. All those absolutely free things you can do to help us with the algorithm, the almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing algorithm. And you know, we could set a record for number of likes right now. Just only costs you a click. Clicks don't cost nothing, Jack. Anyway, So there's that to consider. Plus, if you're watching us live, we have the super chats, we have the memberships, the gifted memberships, and that makes you look cool in front of everybody. And then you can go to our YouTube description if you're listening or watching on demand. That's where the PayPal is, where you give the most, I get the most. We cut out the middleman. The TomGulleyShow.com, of course, that is where you get your merchandise, all that great merchandise. I only mark it up a little bit, so there you go. There you go. Let's go to our interactive chat room here. See what we got. The chef is on the couch, and the chef has already, he's already nailed our nightly goal of any amount of money. That is so awesome. It's not even funny. Charles Manson, terrible babysitter. Poor little devious Charlie, says Zalipa. Good to see Zalipa. Salute from Guido Samurai. Jared's here. Always good to see Jared. Dark Lelit in from a terrible neighborhood in Dallas. Billy Mays is the new mayor of CWCville. Billy Mays is dead. Christian Slater should have been here on the night we did the broom show, because we were talking about brooms, and brooms were originally, some of them, and still to this day, made to remove cobwebs and spider webs from buildings. And there's more spiders from Christian Slater. Good to see you, Christian Slater. Stribs is here. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. Yeah, Crispy. It's strange how some people become people and others become weather. Don't understand what that means whatsoever. James Jordan's here. Great topic. Terrible story. Smedrick says, how many sandwiches would it take to break the speed of light? I don't know. How many ants equal what is the thing that guy said the one night? How many ants equal a bug or something like that? I can't remember. How many ants equal a worm or something? I can't. Goat Scroat says, can I get an order of hamburgers and eggs extra sloppy? If you can find the whale. A horrid username. Shangri, I can't do that. The Hunter says, Manson had charisma, which was one of his most dangerous qualities. I've heard he had that riz. Man, I got to plow through these pretty quick. I got 10 motorcycles in a sleeping bag, Jack. Where's the beef? Reach in and even, I don't even know what that is. Cicada trees are especially wet during the workday afternoons and mornings sometimes. I didn't know there were cicada trees. Don't know what that is. If you drove a rusted van through California desert at 3 a.m. carrying only a banjo, 3 expired maps, and a bag of oranges, you'd still have a bag of oranges. Mary Jacobs, not to be confused with Mary Bruner, met a man named Charles once. Is this the time for shoe bunnies? Who's Charles Manson? Ask your mom. I forgot. What was the name of the 5-hour track on the first SOAD album? I don't know what SOAD is. Charles Manson is like if the raccoon was just trying to get work. I don't even know. I am the god of hellfire, and I bring you fire. I've got a drop here somewhere. I am the god of hellfire. I used to play it all the time. I'll find it. Fire, and then it goes into a song. Fire. How many gullies would take to fill up the doorway? Trick question. The answer is always B. Okay, if you say so. If you say so, all of you pudgy, never played sports people, hunters pointing at things. Jessica Spellbinder says she was working in a bridal shop in Flushing, Queens, when her boyfriend committed DV and turned into bats. I don't know who you're talking about, but no, Minnie Manson's dad, I'm pretty sure. That's just a stupid font. Rich Giraffe with some cool emojis. Raccoon says, I'm thinking, I don't know what that means. Christian Slater says, in a long time no see, Tom. Been listening to the audio podcast while filming Mr. Robot 2.0. Okay, I got to just start reading the good ones. The turtles are tired of being brought into this. What is the volume of one gully? More than you got. More than you can handle. Manson looks like shaman with better teeth. I've got 2 words for you, Tom. Really mull this over. No more nut oils. First of all, that's 4 words. Second of all, when I nut, don't you worry about the oils, sweetheart. White people don't have a culture, says a raccoon that eats trash out of a trash can. Dark Lilith says, he's a tramp, hobo, boxcar, and a jug of wine. Jack. Let's see here. The coyote never agreed to participate in your research. I don't care. Alabama, Timbuktu, Tel Aviv don't amount to a hill of beans as far as I'm concerned. Interchangeable light waves. Are you quoting Charles Manson? Let's see here. This person, Debut Chur 3000. 24. Thanks for the timeout, Tom. Well, I'm sorry I timed you out, but you said the thing about the thing, and I got a rule about that. So, where'd the debut thing go? Hold on. Man, there's too many comments. God, dog, there's a lot of them here. Oh, here we go. The fog's coming for your toilet paper, Jack. Jessica Spellbinder had a father named Jack. Who is Charles Manson? Is he related to Minnie Manson? Hard to say. Be the crust you want to see. Show the man some love. It's the Tom Gulley Show. Yes. I only know Charles Manson for his music. Did he do something else? Yeah, we'll cover that. Smedrick says, I once met a radish named Johnson. He ate a phone book and called it intelligence. Let's see. There's some more spiders for you guys. I just gotta. Wanda says, there was a scary spider in our house the other day. Man, look at that punctuation. Express yourself, Tom. Glands first. You're going to buy me dinner first, just like everyone else. Wanda with the heart. Let's see. This guy had soup for dinner tonight. I hate soup. Hate it. Pretty Woman was an extremely underrated rom-com. You think so? I think it's extremely overrated. And I like the movie. And I'd like to thank... why this has a star, I don't know. But Randy, the chef, $10. Thank you so much. And thank you for the 24 months person that I timed out for saying that which could not be said. You spoke the thing that Jessica Spellbinder says, my bottom speaks infinite truths you couldn't comprehend. That's because I wouldn't even look at your bottom. I think you got to do your homework a little better than that. All right, let's see here. If I remove this, and then I should be like this, but it won't ever do that. It makes me do it. And tip your drinks and enjoy your waitresses, I always say. All right. See, and why do I have to do this now? Why do I have to do that? Although I bet you a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, would prefer it if I did this. I kind of would prefer it, to be honest with you. we going to get some more special effects tonight? Like what? Wanda says, Tom is going to be on Soup Party again. More shaman bashing. I will never, ever appear on Soup Party. Ever again. If you ban me from a chat, I ain't never coming back. You can take that to the bank and cash it. And what do I get from going on Soup Party? What's that going to do for one Tom Gulley? Nothing. I'm thinking I should just do this. Who wants to see my face? You guys want to see the show, right? All right. Sorry, audio podcast listeners. I'm talking about the video setup here. All right. So that fella that I was telling you about, Charles Manson, his real name is Charles Mills Manson. Kind of Maddox, too. So you got Manson and Maddox in one guy. It's a long story, but I'll make it short here in a second. Originally, this fella right here, that guy, he was born Charles Mills Maddox, November 12th, 1934. And his mama was 16 years old. Ada Kathleen Maddox. Yes. And she was from Ashland, Kentucky. Now, why is it showing? Let's see, he was the head of the Manson family, Charles Manson, which a lot of them are those girls. That's them actually outside the courthouse, which they did every day because they had that kind of free time. And they killed a bunch of people. And that is Ashland, Kentucky, where he was born. Yeah. Now, his birth certificate just lists his name as Manson. That's it. Nothing else. His biological father was a guy named Colonel Walker Henderson Scott Sr. of Catlettsburg, Kentucky. Kentucky. Yeah. Against whom Maddox filed a paternity suit, and he agreed to it. About a year later, he said, yeah, I did her. So this Colonel Walker Henderson Scott Sr., which is a lot of name for a guy that was a con artist, okay? He worked in mills and stuff, and he allowed this 16-year-old girl to believe he was an Army colonel, but colonel was actually his given name. So what I'm trying to get across the plate here is that Charles Manson came from some backwater white trash, Kentucky, West Virginia type people, okay? And so when Ada Maddox, Charles Manson's 16-year-old mother, told this guy that she was pregnant, he said, I'm in the Army. I'll see you later. And then a few months later, she realizes he ain't coming back ever. So Manson never knew his biological father. Okay. Now, in August, 2 years before Charlie Manson was even born, she married a guy, Ada Maddox, married a guy named Eugene Manson, who worked at a dry cleaners. And she was awful, his mother. She went on drinking binges with her brother, a guy named Luther Maddox, and would just leave Charlie with babysitters. And so in April, Maddox and her husband divorced. And he alleged gross neglect of duty on her part. So Charles Manson got that guy's last name, even though wasn't his daddy. And then shortly thereafter, his mother and her brother were arrested for assault and robbery and is sentenced to 5 and 10 years of imprisonment, respectively. So Charles Manson is like 5 years old, right? And his mom's going away, and his dad's out of the picture. His mom's going away 4, 5 years. So he was placed in the home of an aunt and an uncle in McEachin, West Virginia. All right? I don't even know where the hell that place is. McEachin, West Virginia. Sorry, McEachin, West Virginia. His mother gets paroled, and Manson says, the first weeks when she got out and came to West Virginia were the happiest times of his life. Just super happy. So they went from McEachin to Charleston, West Virginia, and he was a truant. He hardly went to school. She spent her nights drinking. She was arrested for grand larceny, but she wasn't convicted. But things were getting bad for him. So where did they move? Why, they moved to the capital city. That's the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. I'm sure my good friend the chef knows where this is. Yes, it is my hometown, Indianapolis, Indiana. And that's where Charles Manson's mama meets an alkie named Lewis Woodson Cavender Jr. How did they meet? Well, they met where alkies meet, at Alcoholics Anonymous, where they tell you don't get hooked up with anybody in the program, but they did anyway. And she marries him in 1943 when little Chucky was just 8 years old. 8 years old. What is there any interesting quotes in here? I'm going to burn through these pretty quick. Here. Let's see. There is an uncanny resemblance between Manson and that guy on the internet, Shaman. There is. Jessica Spellbinder, I don't know what's your deal. Finger guns. Exactly, Wanda. Thank you. They're twins, apparently. Let's see. Zalipa, the Manson lamps. Do you guys remember in The Sopranos when Richie Aprile, I think it's Richie, is giving Tony dirty looks when Tony's reaming him out for association garbage routes being used to sell cocaine. And he's giving him that dirty look. Hey, you be giving me the Manson lamps. Charlie Manson eyes. I'm sorry. Okay, let me get through some of these. I don't think... God, you guys have got some really awful things that I can't even discuss here. Okay. What's this say? Indiana, where all the stars are born. Exactly. Thank you. Take a breather. My guns are drooping. No, they're not. No, they're not, sister. No, they're not. Sent a very appropriate pic to your Discord direct messages. Well, I'll look at it after the show. Yes, I will. Fine, I'm going down to dinky size again, just because you said. In an interview with Diane Sawyer. What in the high holy hey? Oh, yeah, she met him in Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah. That's another problem with StreamYard. So it's like an OBS, I can actually see all of the stuff that I'm putting into the slideshow. Of course, not on StreamYard, because of course, if they were smart, they would have a preview that showed you the very next slide, right? Who's with me on that? Anyway, in an interview that he did with Diane Sawyer, Charles Manson stated that when he was 9 years old, when I was 9 years old, I set my school on fire, Jack. And he repeatedly was in trouble for truancy, which was a thing back then. Now it's just called homeschooled, and petty theft. In 1947, although there was a lack of foster home placements, Charles Manson was sent to the Gibault School for Boys. Yeah. A school for male delinquents run by Catholic priests. It was a strict school. Punishments for even the smallest infraction included beatings with a wooden paddle or a leather strap. And he ran away from there and slept in the woods and under bridges and wherever he could find shelter. And so he flees home to his mother and spends Christmas 1947 at his aunt and uncle's house back there in McKetchin, West Virginia. And then his mom rats him out and sends him back to the Gibault School for Boys. And 10 months later, he escapes again and goes back to Indianapolis. And there it was in 1948 that Charles Manson committed his first documented crime by robbing a grocery store. And he did that at first just to find something to eat. But he found a cigar box in one of these grocery stores because he wasn't going into the grocery store and saying, "Stick 'em up, Jack. I'm 9 years old. I'm gonna," No, he wasn't doing that. He was stealing food, and if somebody was away from the register, he pops it open, and he did this one time, and he found $100 in a cigar box, which he used to rent a room on Indianapolis's Skid Row and then buy food. And for a time, he had a job doing this right over here, delivering messages for Western Union in an attempt to, hold down a steady job at the age of like 10 years old, right? And it wasn't enough just delivering, that's a kid's job, obviously, so it wasn't enough to keep an apartment and all that. So he starts to supplement his income by stealing again, and he was eventually caught again. But a sympathetic judge sends him to a very, very famous place. And that famous place is called Boys Town in Nebraska. Father Flanagan. The statue, he ain't heavy, he's my brother. That place, super famous place. That judge had to be sympathetic. And Boys Town was known as a place that would rehabilitate. I forget there's a saying about Boys Town. There's nothing that makes a bad boy that can't make a good man or something. Anyway, and there's a famous movie about it with Spencer Tracy as Father Flanagan. And so they send him to Boys Town. Famous place. Hey, you know how it's famous? Here's how you can tell it's famous. They made a postcard out of it. You don't make a postcard out of a boys' reform school unless it's famous. Omaha, Nebraska, long way from Indianapolis. And so Charles Manson embraced this new opportunity. I'm kidding. Of course he didn't. After being there for 4 days, he and his buddy, a fellow student named Blackie Nielsen, here's like a rule for the olden times. If a guy's name was Blackie and he wasn't black, you probably didn't want to hang around with him. Also, if a guy's name was Blackie and he was black back then, that wasn't altogether great either. So after 4 days, they steal a gun and steal a car. And they use the gun and the car to commit not one but 2 armed robberies on their way to the home of Blackie Nielsen's uncle in Peoria, Illinois. They go to Peoria, Illinois. Oh, by the way, here is, oh God, this is so great. This is the article that they wrote when they sent Charles Manson to Boys Town. Dream comes true for lad. He's going to Boys Town. It's goodbye and good luck. And as you can see there, Judge Joseph G. Huffman shakes hands with 14-year-old Charles Manson and wishes him good luck on his trip to Boys Town. Oh, man. What luck. They're sending him to Boys Town. Everything will be fine now. Anyway, they steal a car, and why is that there? It's not even supposed to be there. Well, it can be there. Blackie Nielsen's. Now get this. So they're at the legendary Boys Town, right? There they are. Legendary place. Turns bad boys into lawyers and bank presidents, and a movie about it, and He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother, and all that stuff. And there was an article about it. What luck. They're sending Charles Manson to Boys Town. Great. 4 days he's there, steals a gun and a car, Blackie Nelson and him, 2 armed robberies on the way to Blackie Nelson's uncle's house in Peoria, Illinois. Now, luckily, Blackie Nelson's uncle happened to be a pastor at a local church. No, I'm kidding. Blackie Nielsen's uncle was a professional thief. And when the boys arrived, he took them on as apprentices. Okay? He took them on as apprentice thieves. Like you would. Manson was arrested 2 weeks later during a nighttime raid on a Peoria store. In the investigation that followed, he was linked to the 2 earlier armed robberies coming out there, and he was sent to the Indiana Boys School, a strict reform school outside of Plainfield, Indiana. Later on in the universe, I would have the opportunity of playing a basketball game against the inmates of not the Plainfield Boys School anymore, the Plainfield Penitentiary. Yes, they turned it into a penitentiary. And while I was playing the basketball game there, do you know who one of the inmates was? It was a man by the name of Mike Tyson. And I made a really good play and made the shot. And as I'm running down, because on the stage in the gym, because remember, it was a boys' school, there was a stage in the gym, and they turned that into like a weight room. There was weights and everything on this big stage. And they shot, running back down the court, and I hear, "Good shot, man, good shot." Mike Tyson. But I digress. At the Indiana Boys School, other students, and this is where, you know. Let's take a break in the action here, because things are going to get really bad for Charles Manson. And I know that's a phrase you never thought you would hear anybody ever use. But I'm saying things are going to get really bad for Charles Manson. I'm not known for being very lenient with people. So when I say things are about to get really bad for Charles Manson, they're about to get really bad for Charles Manson. So bad you might want to take a break and rest. I can't go back through all of these darn things. Let me just skim them very quickly. Diane Sawyer is slippier than a cup soda can. Let's see. Oh, this is that fiction about, well, maybe. I know he wanted everybody else tripping on acid, you know. Oh, boy. My daughter broke my gully mug, so I sent her to Zanzibar. Well, there's plenty more where that came from, Smendrick. Plenty more where that came from. We got mugs. Let's see here. People complaining. I don't even know what that means. WandaBot laughing about something, and I don't even know. Lisa Pod, as above, so below. I am Dark Phoenix Rufio. Don't know what it means. Sober as a Judge, thank you so much for the $20 donation. He said, someone hit a scurry of squirrels in my glove compartment. I know they're still there because I can hear them vibrating at a frequency of 20 kilohertz at night, but I'm too afraid to check. Well, you can just check on your radio, probably. Ancient civilizations had podcasts. We never get anything done. It's easy to get things done. We used to play the boys' school in pee-wee football, says the Wolf. Unrelated, but apparently Hunter Biden is sober and into Gnosticism. Well, check your DMs. I can't jump on StreamYards now. I can't get on Discord right now. Dan Rather is a shoplifter of the mind. You guys are lucky. I was going to do in the cold open, I was going to tell you what I think of this whole CBS Barry Weiss 60 Minutes thing. You shouldn't read the book Demonology. I heard it was like the Necronomicon. You start seeing things, bro. I wouldn't read that anyway. Old soda can Sawyer. Anyway. So when he was at the Indiana Boys School, Chuck Manson was essayed by the other boys, apparently with the encouragement of a staff member. Now, I'm sure Charlie told this story, so, but still, and he was repeatedly beaten. That's what he says. Smedrick, thank you so much. Sanity is a small box. Insanity is everything. Insanity is everything. Okay, I got you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. He ran away from the school 18 times. Now, see, he's Charles Manson. See, that's when he's made things tough on himself. Because he's Charles Manson, so he's a Fruit Loop. He could have just been running away to run away, to be obstinate, and he doesn't get along and all that. Or 18 times sounds to me like a guy that was getting boned up for being a wise guy. You know what I'm saying? Who knows what to believe? And it was during this time Manson developed a self-defense technique that he referred to as the insane game, where he would screech and grimace and wave his arms to convince stronger aggressors that he was insane. Jack, let me tell you, Jack, I don't know what you're going to do with that dowel rod, Jack, but I'm going to turn my mind as a play box in the sand. My mind is a fruit roll-up in the universe. Okay, whatever, man. Okay, Jack. In February of 1951, after a number of failed attempts, he escaped, finally, with two other boys. All three escapees robbed filling stations while attempting to drive to California in stolen cars until, and there he is. Then he looked like a guy, that face says to me, I don't want to get raped anymore. Until they were arrested in Utah. That's right. For the federal crime of driving a stolen car across state lines, Manson was sent to Washington, D.C.'s National Training School for Boys. On arrival, he was given aptitude tests that determined very quickly he was illiterate, but had an IQ of 109. His caseworker deemed him aggressively antisocial because he had been getting the old, in the, you know. The book, kid. Just give me the book. Have you seen my 30-foot tall friend? Well, that is what I can do for you. Just give me the book. I don't know what that means. 5 nights and the night is worth a bowl of Fruit Loops in heaven, Jack. Everything was Jack with him. Anyway. In October of 1951, on a psychiatrist's recommendation, Charles Manson was transferred to Natural Bridge Honor Camp, a minimum security institution in Virginia. His aunt visited him and told the administrators, she would let him stay at her house and help him find work. Manson had a parole hearing scheduled for February of 1952. So, about 4 months later. In January, he was caught graping another boy at knife point. And he was transferred to the Federal Reformatory in Petersburg, Virginia, where he committed a further 8 serious disciplinary offenses, 3 involving homosexual acts. Pride Month, Tom Gulley Show cares. And by the way, let's just say involuntary homosexual act. Involuntary homosexual. Seems like Chuck got a really good schooling, going to all the boys' schools. Yes, private schools. The finest of education. 5 times a night I get the stimulation again. Better me than anyone else, but it gets under my skin. Whatever. Anyway. He was then moved to a maximum security reformatory at Chillicothe, Ohio, where he was expected to remain until his release on his 21st birthday in November of 1955. But good behavior led him to an early release in May of 1954 to live with his aunt and his uncle in West Virginia. Can you dig it? In January of 1955, oh wait, I'm foreshadowing a little bit. In January of 1955, Manson married a hospital waitress. I don't even know what that is. They apologize. No need to worry. Paused Up Patriot is here. Hey, Tom. Hey, Pause. Hospital waitress. Can I take your temperature? Would you like to hear about today's special? Named Rosie Jean Willis. Okay. Around October, which would have been January to October, about 3 months after he and his pregnant wife arrived in Los Angeles. Hey, they moved out to Los Angeles. He's starting a new life. Oh, wait. They got there in a car that he had stolen in Ohio. Manson was again charged with a federal crime for taking the vehicle across state lines. After a psychiatric evaluation, he was given 5 years probation. Hey, man, things are looking up. The shrink, the head doctor says, hey, he's a little touched. Why don't you give him 5 years probation? Unfortunately, Manson failed to appear at a Los Angeles hearing on an identical charge filed in Florida, and that resulted in his March 1956 arrest in beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana. His probation was revoked, and he was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment at Terminal Island in Los Angeles. I said Terminal Island. Not a good place to be, Terminal Island. And I'd like to point out right now that one of Charles Manson's problems, among the many, was he kept breaking federal laws. State laws, if he'd have done similar crimes and gotten state penalties, he wouldn't have done nearly the time as federal. Back then, as it is today, federal crimes get you nailed. Absolutely nailed. September Angel 1975, or just 975, says, hello, I just found this podcast. Looks interesting. Well, looks can be deceiving. September Angel. That's for damn sure. So Terminal Island. That's Terminal Island. Hey, let's try and escape. All we have to do is avoid all that boat traffic while we're swimming. Oh, sorry. While Charles Manson was in prison, that wife of his, Rosie, she gave birth to their son, Charles Manson Jr. How'd you like to go through life being Charles Manson Jr.? Wouldn't that be a thrill? I think that'd be a blast, wouldn't it? Let's see your resume. Looks like everything's here. Whoa. That name's a joke, right? Charles Manson, why don't you just be Adolf Hitler Jr.? Anyway, during his first year there at Terminal Island, Manson was frequently visited by Rosie, and Manson's alcoholic mother would visit him. And they were both living there in Los Angeles. But in March of 1957, the visits from Rosie tapered off. And when I say tapered off, I mean they just stopped completely. And Charles Manson's mom, always a center of comfort and motherly love, she informed him that Rosie was living with another man. And so less than 2 weeks before a scheduled parole hearing, Manson tried to escape the prison by stealing a car, and he was given 5 years probation, and his parole was denied. So, in September of 1958, though, Manson did get 5 years parole, right? And what luck. That was just exactly when Rosie received a decree of divorce. So now he's not tied down. He's a single guy in L.A. Everything's going great. So that was in September of 1958. By November of 1958, just a couple months later, he was pimping a 16-year-old girl and receiving additional support from a girl with wealthy parents. In September of 1959, he pleaded guilty to a charge of attempting to cash, yes, a forged U.S. Treasury check, which he claimed to have stolen from a mailbox. Now, the latter part of that was dropped. The charge was dropped. Okay? He received a 10-year suspended sentence and probation after a young woman named Leona Candy Stevens, who had an arrest record for prostitution, made a tearful plea before the court that she and Manson were deeply in love and he would marry Charlie if he were freed. Before the year had ended, she did indeed marry Charles Manson, a fella by the name, by the way, dumb idea, to a forged treasury check. That's another federal crime. Anyway, Vincent Bugliosi, the prosecutor who later got the conviction of murder on Manson. Actually, it was accessory to murder, I think. He believed the marriage may have been so she could not be required to testify against him. So he takes his new wife and another woman to New Mexico. New freaking Mexico. And they do that for the to prostitute, resulting in him being held and questioned for violating the Mann Act. The Mann Act was an act that said you can't take women across state lines to make them be prostitutes. Anyway, although he was released, Manson correctly suspected that the investigation hadn't ended, and when he disappeared in violation of his probation, a bench warrant was issued. In April of 1960, an indictment for violation of the Mann Act followed. All these federal charges, man, following the arrest of one of the women for prostitution. Manson was arrested in June in down in the West Texas town of Laredo. Anyway. And they returned him back to L.A. For violating his probation on the check-cashing charge, he was ordered to serve his 10-year prison sentence. This is in 1960. Oh, my God. He's going to do 10 years hard time. You know? Manson is what got me following true crime. Did you read Helter Skelter? Probably. There's another good book by Ed Sanders called The Family. Very, very, very good book. Smithers, where was he going with a car? He was going to Prostitution Town. That check was $35. I know. Yeah, he was not a bright man. Sometimes I think he thought, oh, it's only $35. They won't do anything to me. Manson spent a year trying unsuccessfully to appeal his parole being revoked, his probation. In January 1961, he was transferred from the Los Angeles County Jail to the United States Penitentiary at McNeil Island, Washington. He got to go to the islands a lot. There, Charles Manson took guitar lessons from this fella, the leader of the Barker Karpus gang, Alvin Creepy Karpus. Why was he called Creepy? Sorry, audio podcast listeners. Look at him. He's creepy. This is probably more when he met Charles Manson, was this particular wonderful photo. By the way, Creepy, he was one of those dudes in the 30s that had his fingerprints burned off of him. So when he robbed stuff, they couldn't connect it back to him. So he took guitar lessons from this guy. He also got the contact information while he was in prison. He's getting into music, man. He's, one of those guys. You guys have all known people that get into music and suddenly they're going to be a big star. Well, he also got the contact information from, sorry, audio podcast listeners, the guy with the hat and the T-shirt that said Road Mangler. And there's Emmylou Harris. A pretty famous record producer and tour manager named Phil Kaufman, who's probably most famous for burning Graham Parsons out in the desert after he died. He burned him up out there. So Manson gets Phil Kaufman's information. Wolf says, I wonder if they had pot trouble and got caught in a hailstorm in New Mexico. I don't know. Let me tell you something. When I drove out here from Dallas, US 40 is 382 miles of pothole. Seriously, it damaged some of my stuff. Just from worst road in the United States. All right. Among Manson's fellow prisoners there at McNeil Island at that time, Danny Trio. And the two of them apparently participated in some hypnosis sessions together. Manson's mom also moved to Washington State to be closer to him while he was on McNeil Island working nearby as a waitress. So they dropped the Mann Act charges, right? But the attempt to cash the treasury check was still a federal offense, a big one. Manson's September 1961 annual review noted he had a tremendous drive to call attention to himself. Jack. An observation echoed in September of 1964. In 1963, Leona was the prostitute he married after Rosie. She was granted a divorce. During the process, she alleged that she and Manson had a son, Charles Luther Manson. And according to a very popular urban legend, Manson supposedly unsuccessfully auditioned for the Monkees in late 1965. Don't believe it. Manson was still in jail at the time. So, In June of 1966, Manson was sent for the second time to Terminal Island to prepare for his early release. By the time of his release, March 21st, 1967, he had spent more than half of his 32 years in prisons and other institutions. Now, this was mainly, as I mentioned, because he broke federal laws, because he was a dummy. Telling the authorities that his prison had become his home, he requested permission to stay. Yes. Less than a month after his 1967 release, Manson moved to Berkeley from Los Angeles, which actually could have been a probation violation. Instead, after calling the San Francisco probation office upon his arrival, he was transferred to the supervision of criminology doctoral researcher and federal probation officer Roger Smith. Until the spring of 1968, Smith worked at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, which Manson and his family went to all the time. Roger Smith, as well as the founder of this horrible place, David Smith, received funding from the National Institutes of Health and reportedly the CIA to study the effects of drugs like LSD and methamphetamine on the counterculture movement in the Haight-Ashbury district. The patients at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic became subjects of their research, including Manson and his expanding group of mostly female followers who went in and saw Roger Smith regularly. Manson actually got permission from Roger Smith to move to the Haight-Ashbury district. Now, you younger kids might not know this. Manson took the first train to Clarksville, and he met him at the station. He can be there at 4:30 because he's got a reservation. Road Mangler looks totally trustworthy. I've got his autobiography. I've spoken to Phil Kaufman before. Haight-Ashbury was the place. It was the epicenter of the Summer of Love. It was the hippie headquarters of the United States. So, and that people sleeping on the streets, free love, the whole thing. He first took LSD and would use it regularly during his time in Haight-Ashbury. David Smith, the head of that free clinic, wrote that Manson's personality during this time was the most abrupt change Roger Smith had observed in his entire professional career. Manson also read the book Stranger in a Strange Land, a science fiction novel by Robert Heinlein. The thing is, Stranger in a Strange Land, it's about an alien from Mars that comes to Earth and their acclimation to Earth and Earthlings. It's a book somebody that didn't feel part of society would really, really like. Inspired by the absolutely exploding philosophy of free love in Haight-Ashbury during the Summer of Love. The Summer of Love. The Summer of Love, which was just rock concerts and drugs. And you know what free love was, right? Free love. It accepts all forms of love, separating people from marriage and a lot of birth control, a lot of adultery, that sex was just anybody that wants it can have it from you, that kind of thing. Yeah, Manson was into that. And I read that and I went, well, yeah, but who wouldn't? That's one of the only good things the hippies... our good friend Pot Awful says, you can grab as many as you want, sailor. They ain't budging. I don't know what that means, but it is funny. Yeah. So Manson, he's digging the free love in Haight-Ashbury during the Summer of Love. The Summer of Love is legendary. Rock concerts and LSD, much as you want. much as you like pot, don't need a place to stay. Somebody will just let you stay with them. You need some money. Here, I've got some. So Manson starts to preach a little bit because he's 32. And all of these kids are kids. Now, imagine some of you are 32 or around there or older than that, perhaps. Imagine being in a town where everybody is 17 to 20 years old. Everybody. And you're among them. Do you not think with your wily 32-year-old brain that you couldn't, you know what I mean? So Manson starts preaching. And Manson has created his own philosophy. And he makes a jambalaya. Yeah, I said it, jambalaya. He makes a jambalaya out of Stranger in a Strange Land and the Bible. Remember Stranger in a Strange Land? The Mars guy comes down. Yeah. The Bible and the Scientology there with L. Ron Hubbard. He gets a little of that in it. And a little bit of Dale Carnegie, how to make friends and impress people, that kind of thing. Then, of course, he throws the Beatles in there. Got to get a little of the Beatles involved. And he starts to get a following. He starts to get some people. And believe me, Summer of Love, all the people in Haight-Ashbury, just if you got a small percentage, you could get a following. Some people believe that he also borrowed a lot from this church called the Process Church of the Final Judgment. And the Process Church of the Final Judgment, just to boil it way, way down, was an attempt to make Satan reconcile with God. And so people were to rid themselves of the things that made God mad at Satan. That's part of it. Part of it. And he needed that. Fun fact, his probation officer allowed him to do what he wanted. I know. Roger Smith just said, yeah, go ahead, whatever. Victorian Greyjoy says, Tom, the Summer of Love is burning down Wendy's and robbing the Foot Locker, not a hippie commie concert movement. The Summer of Love, they're looting the Food King. What movie? Anybody? Can anybody tell me what that line's from? They're looting the Food King. All right. It's like a cosmic jumbo jack. Cosmic gumbo jack. He was used for experiments in MK Ultra. Well, some people say that, but maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Who knows? That Fruit Loop. Yeah. So the church, the Process Church of the Final Judgment, believes that Jesus and Satan would become friends at the end of the world, and they would judge humanity. And Manson began studying Scientology while he was in prison with the help of a fellow inmate, and in 1961 actually listed Scientology as his religion. His report, psychology report in prison in 1961 in September says Manson appears to have developed a certain amount of insight into his problems through his study of this discipline about Scientology. But by August of 1966, he no longer was an advocate of Scientology. When he got released in 67 and went to L.A., Manson supposedly met a bunch of Scientologists and attended several parties for movie stars. He completed in Scientology, because the Scientologists keep really good records. He completed 150 hours of what they call auditing in Scientology. Processing. It's where you get asked questions by somebody. You're on an e-meter. And don't ask me to explain more of it than that. Manson's right-hand man, Bruce Davis, worked at the Church of Scientology headquarters in London between November 68 and April 69. Hey, look at Bruce. He looks pretty old, and he's 5'6". He's like 83 years old and he's still in prison. I wonder why. Oh, I know why. I remember why now. He's a brutal, horrible murderer. That's why. Genie gets it. Yes, they're looting the Food King is from Animal House. Yes. 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 Still taller than Shaman. In my opinion, the government used him to help with a social experiment. Maybe. I think it's also possible the government at some point went, this is some really rotten fruit. I don't know if we can do anything with him. After, looks like the neighbor who'd mow your lawn. Oh, dear. Sorry I didn't get here last week. I had to, anyway. Shortly after relocating to San Francisco, Manson became acquainted with Mary Bruner, 23-year-old graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Now, she was working as a library assistant at Berkeley. And Manson, he was making a living by, panhandling. He was a panhandler. And by that, I don't mean that he was a cook or a dishwasher at a fine restaurant. I mean, he was asking people for their spare change. He was not handling pans. And he moves in with Mary Bruner here. He then met a teenaged runaway, and this is a real prize here. Lynette Squeaky Fromm. And he convinced Lynette to live with him and Bruner. And Lynette here, I picked the nicest picture I could find of her. You can find better pictures of her after she tried to assassinate President Gerald Ford. Lucas Malago, thank you so much for the $5. I've got to say, while his music was horrible, that interview with Tom Snyder is some of the greatest media from Charles Manson, and we will get there, Lucas Malago. By the way, I want to again tell people, Lucas Malago every single night likes and shares, retweets my Twitter posting about this show, and I appreciate that a lot. If only everyone would do it, what a bright world this would be. Anyway, she's got that Putin dead-eye smile. Somehow Kratom makes you 4'9". Ah, dear. Anyway, Squeaky Fromm here, she's still alive, and she is still bat guano crazy. According to some accounts, Manson overcame Bruner's initial resistance to him bringing other women in to live with them. Before long, they were sharing Bruner's residence with 18 other women. Now, you can say what you want about Charles Manson, but his pimp hand was strong. However, if you've seen pictures of most of these women, let's just say they were women you could probably get to move in with 17 other women. Manson targeted individuals for manipulation who were emotionally insecure and social outcast. Oh, boy, didn't he. Boy, didn't he. Yeah. I always share this show, but I use the Postal Service. Results incoming, Tom. Wanda's here. She's smiling. Rich Giraffe says, let's Malago. Manson established himself as somewhat of a guru in the Haight-Ashbury area, which during the summer of love was the hippie place to be. He soon had the first of his followers. Most of them were female, and they were dubbed the Manson family, but they were called the Manson family by Vincent Bugliosi. That's who named them the Manson family. They didn't call them, they kind of called them themselves just the family once in a while, but Manson taught these people that they were the reincarnation of the original Christians and that the establishment, the man, was the Romans. Okay? Before the end of the summer in 1967, he and some of his followers began traveling in an old school bus they had adapted, kind of like the Partridge Family. And they put colored rugs and pillows in the place of the seats that they'd moved. Later on, when Manson started to go really dark, they painted the inside of it completely black, and it was creepy. Squeaky Fromm lives in New York in a bunker. There's a website. I'm not going to tell you the name of it. You can probably find it. It's a blog that's got pictures of all the Manson family members. Now, most of them, the vast majority of them, have moved on to normal lives, and they don't want to have anything to do with their past. A lot of them have died. You know, they're older, but a lot of them are like these really normal-looking middle America suburban people now. And Squeaky Fromm is not that. I don't know if Sandra Good is still alive. I don't know. I used to know what happened to all of them. I don't anymore. But there is a website that it's a blog that you can go to and see all of them still. Squeaky's the only one that's still, and she is toxic. She is filled with vitriol and anger, and she was the one that kept running that air, trees, water, whatever, animals thing for him. The right term is family, like the Corleone style, yes. In 1967, wait. Sorry. They eventually settled the Manson family in places in Los Angeles, like Topanga Canyon, Malibu, and Venice, places sort of along the coast and stuff. Jessica Spellbinder says she has a burning sensation in her epiglottimus, and yeah, it would be more in your bronchi if I was with you. Let's see. 1967, Bruner became pregnant by Manson. On tax day in 1968, she gave birth to their son, who she named Valentine Michael, in a condemned house they were living in Topanga Canyon. She was assisted in the birth by several young women from the fledgling family. Mary Bruner, like most of the members of the group, acquired a number of aliases and nicknames, including Mariachi, Ock, Mother Mary, Mary Manson, Linda D. Manson, Christine Marie Eucts. In his book, Love Needs Care, about his time at the Haight-Ashbury Family Medical Center, David Smith claimed that Manson attempted to reprogram his followers' minds to submit totally to his will through the use of LSD and unconventional sexual practices that would turn his followers into empty vessels that would accept anything that he poured. Manson family member Paul Watkins testified that Manson would encourage group LSD trips and take lower doses himself to keep his wits about him. Watkins stated that Charlie's trip was to program us all to submit. By the end of his stay in Haight in April of 1968, Manson had attracted 20 or so followers, all under the supervision of Roger Smith and many of the staff at the Haight-Ashbury Family Medical Center. The core of the group eventually included Mary Bruner, Tex Watson, a musician and former actor, Bobby Beausoleil, a former musician and actor, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and, of course, Leslie Van Houten. Those were the core. Supervised by the parole officer that let him do anything, Manson grew his family through drug use and prostitution. Oh, you betcha. Without interference from the authorities, because he had this parole officer on his side. Manson was arrested on July 31st, 1967, for attempting to prevent the arrest of one of his followers, Ruth Ann Morehouse, who was underage. Yes. What do you got going on here? What do you got here? Topanga Canyon, Mr. Feeney Valley, Sean Ditch. Topanga, isn't that the name of a chick in one of those 90s kids sitcoms? September says, I assume she's talking about Squeaky Fromm. She still loves Manson and Sandra Good as well as believe in him. Sandra is married. I think it's Sandra I've seen pictures of that I'm like, that looks like one of my mom's friends. Schmendrick says, Tom Gulley Show. Yeah, it's on. It's in the air, man, like a vibration, a frequency cutting through static. You see the patterns, the lights flicking, the voices bleeding through the walls. Oh, yeah, man, you dig. It's all coming right to your door. You can't stop the clock from tipping when the show's already playing in your head. Dig. Look, Buster, you can lead, but you can't make her. Yeah, you can. Boy Meets World. Yeah, Topanga. Yeah, get some of that. Read that in Greg's voice. Yeah, it's on. It's in the air, man, like a vibration, as it were. Frequency vis-a-vis cutting through the static. You see the patterns, the lights flicking, the voices bleeding. You need references, though, to be really Greggish. Yeah. Capote's story about Bobby Beausoleil is great. There's all these people that want him released. And I'm just like, look, no, you don't read what he did to Gary Hinman and then say you want him released. Now, I get it that most of the Manson family people have been in jail longer than people that did similar crimes, even murder. But they're never going to let them go because they're Manson family people. What politician or political party wants to be the one that let Bobby Beausoleil out? I mean, and when you see what he did, it's just, no, you can stay in there now. I don't think you could function anymore anyway. He'd be like Brooks or something in Shawshank, you know. I'm more of an Uncle Ted guy than Aunt Charlie, but that's just my opinion. All right. Instead of Manson being sent back to prison, the charge was reduced to a misdemeanor. Manson was given 3 additional years of probation. So if they'd have sent him to jail, everybody, Tate LaBianca's alive. He avoided prosecution again in July of 1968 when he and the family were arrested while moving to L.A. after his bus crashed into a ditch. Manson and members of his family, including Mary Bruner and Manson's newborn baby, were found sleeping naked by the police. Afterwards, he was again arrested and released only a few days later. This time on a drug charge. Now we get to kind of the rock and roll. We're starting to get into the problem that caused the Tate LaBianca murders, in my opinion. One of the big things. And it's famous rock and roll stuff, Daddy-O. Jack, you know what I'm saying, Jack? Good vibrations, Jack. I know Dennis Wilson, yes, on April 6, 1968. Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys was driving through Malibu when he noticed 2 female hitchhikers, Patricia Krenwinkel. Who would pull over for Patricia Krenwinkel? She's nasty. Let's just say this is her month. And Ella Jo Bailey. He picked them up, dropped them off at their destination, right? On April 11th, Wilson noticed the same 2 girls hitchhiking again, and this time took him to his home on Sunset Boulevard. There's the Beach Boys. Dennis Wilson is one of the Beach Boys. They're rich. They're famous. There's Sunset Boulevard, where he's got a mansion. All right? He's got a mansion. Let's see. September Angel says none of them should be released. Leslie Van Houten was released in 2024. I thought she was released in 2023, or maybe that's when her parole hearing was. And she had to do 3 years in a halfway house. She's kept a very low profile. If any of them deserve to be released, it would be Leslie Van Houten. And that reason for that is, in my opinion, she was not at the Cielo Drive location. She didn't even go that night. The testimony regarding her activities at the LaBianca house is really thin, really weak, and there's a lot of people who believe anything that she did was post-mortem. Also, she was the first person to renounce Charlie, and she did so much good works inside that prison when she was there. She started programs for girls to get degrees. and set them up for careers after they were released. She did a newsletter. She did counts. Any of them need to be, released. It's Leslie Van Houten. Although she did have a few problems. She was about to get married to a guy that was found with escape stuff. But anyway, also, Leslie Van Houten was tried, I think, separately, and there was a problem with her case. And so she had to be retried. There's a couple of other things unique to her. Bobby B needs to stay in. Been talking a lot to Tom Hanks lately. We are starting a Tomboys Club. Well, then. I'm sorry. I think you're right. Well, that's no big deal. You can look it up. I probably will cover it here in a second. Anyway, so he brings these two chicks back to this mansion, right, on Sunset Boulevard. He later recalls, Dennis Wilson, that he told the girls, hey, we're involved, us Beach Boys are involved with the Maharishi Yogi, this famous Maharishi that the Beatles were seeing and everybody else. Here in this picture, you see the guy on the end there that's a photographer, and then there's Mick Jagger, and there's Marianne Faithfull, and then there's a journalist, and then another one of the Rolling Stones there on the end with the Maharishi. And these girls are all excited. They go, we've got a guru too, a guy named Charlie. Yeah, a guy named Charlie. And so Dennis Wilson then went to a recording session. When he returned later on, Charlie Manson meets him in the driveway. And when Wilson walked into his home, about a dozen people were there, most of them young women. And Dennis Wilson's like, it's not so bad. By Manson's own account, he had met Wilson on at least one prior occasion. And Manson claimed that Wilson invited him to visit his home when he came to Los Angeles. Yeah, right. Dennis Wilson was originally, apparently Charlie had acquired some marijuana for Dennis Wilson. That was why he had met him the first time. So, yeah. Wilson was initially fascinated by these guys. He referred to Charlie, in fact, in a magazine article in Rave Magazine, calling him the Wizard. They struck up a friendship, and over the next few months, members of the Manson family, most of the women who were there treated as servants, clean up my house and stuff, they were living in Dennis Wilson's house. And that went on for about 6 months. And then Dennis Wilson introduced Charles Manson to a few friends in the music business. And this is the band The Byrds. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. Yeah, that group, right? And they have a producer, and that guy's name is Terry Melcher. Terry Melcher is the only child of Doris Day, famous movie star. So Charles Manson recorded numerous songs at Dennis Wilson's brother Brian's home studio. Although those particular recordings, those ones, the ones at Brian Wilson's home studio, have never been heard by the public at large, ever. Band engineer Stephen Desper said that the Manson sessions were done for Dennis Wilson and Terry Melcher only. In September of 1968, Dennis Wilson recorded a Charles Manson song for the Beach Boys. Charlie, when he wrote it, the title was Cease to Exist, which, you know what I mean? Because that's kind of was his thing. But the Beach Boys reworked it to Learn Not to Love. That's Dennis Wilson again there. They reworked it, him and Terry Melcher. It was reworked as Learn Not to Love. Single, B-side, released following December. The writing was credited solely to Dennis Wilson. When asked why Manson was not credited, Dennis Wilson explained that Manson relinquished his publishing rights in favor of about $100,000 worth of stuff. because it was around this time that the family destroyed two of Wilson's luxury cars, drunk driving and everything else. And also, the family pretty much cleaned that mansion out of anything of value and hawked it for money. You know, that's what they did. Victorian Greyjoy says, Tom, my points are brilliant as I type them, but when you read them, it sounds dumb. I'm sorry. Wanda says, I was singing that a week ago, Tom. It's like you knew. Well, the birds knew. They encode the musical notes with instructions. If you're tapping your toe to their dance, you're already a part of it. Wow. The Beach Boys never actually went to the beach. It's weird. Yes, they did. Trash. They were trash. They really were. Jessica Spellbinder says this: the most important muscle in a grown man's body ain't the bicep, it's the glute. I can think of a more important muscle than that. Wilson eventually distanced himself from Manson, and he moved out of the Sunset. But imagine this: you're a famous rock star, and you move out of your mansion, and you leave these hippies there, and you move into a basement apartment in Santa Monica. Virtually all of Dennis Wilson's household possessions were stolen by the family. The members of the family were evicted from Dennis Wilson's house 3 weeks before the lease was scheduled to expire. When Manson sought further contact, he left a bullet with Dennis Wilson's housekeeper to be delivered with a threatening message. Band manager Nick Grillo of the Beach Boys recalled that Dennis Wilson became concerned after Manson had got into a much heavier drug situation, taking a tremendous amount of acid, and Dennis wouldn't tolerate it and asked him to leave. It was difficult for Dennis because he was afraid of Charles Manson. In his 2016 memoir, Beach Boy guy Mike Love, one of the band, recalled, and he still is with the Beach Boys. This guy is the guy you see, halftime at the, tractor pulls doing the Beach Boys. Mike Love recalled Wilson saying he had witnessed Manson shooting a black man in half with an M16 rifle and hiding the body inside a well. Melcher said that Wilson had been fully aware that the family were killing people and had been so freaked out he just didn't want to live anymore. He was afraid, and he thought he should have gone to the authorities, but he didn't. And then everything else happened. Smedrick says, minus the butt stuff at the beginning, I'm kind of jealous of Manson's. I don't know that the butt stuff stopped, Smedrick. If you read more into it, it might not have stopped. And not without Charlie's approval, by the way. So Manson establishes a base for the family and another place he could freeload at the Spahn Ranch after they got evicted. Now, the Spahn Ranch has burned down. It's since burned down, but they use this in so many TV shows and movies, it's not even funny. You definitely, without even knowing it, have seen the Spahn Ranch in a movie or TV show, if you've watched any old episodes of anything. However, in the late 60s, some of these things were starting to deteriorate, and they were making money mostly by selling horseback rides. Female family members did chores around the ranch, and occasionally, so they didn't have to pay any rent, those of you who've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood know that, well, the nearly blind owner, George Spahn, got free the act of physical love in exchange for them saying there for free. And they did his little cooking in-house stuff. In exchange, they got to live there for free. So Manson now starts doing doomsday cult stuff, right? He wants a race war between blacks and whites, Charlie was a white supremacist. He told all the family that black people would rise up and kill the entire white population, except for Charlie and his followers. But that they wouldn't be able to survive on their own because they're not smart enough, so they needed a white guy to lead them, and Charlie would do that for them. And it was around this time that Charlie adopted the term helter-skelter from the Beatles' recently released White Album, which really doesn't show up that great here in my slideshow, but there it is, the Beatles' White Album. And so it was that in March of 1969, Charles Manson entered the grounds of, 10050 Cielo Drive, which he thought was Terry Melcher's residence. Remember Terry Melcher, the producer for the Beach Boys that he'd been introduced to? He wasn't invited there that day. And as he approached the main house, he was met by a guy named Shahrokh Hatami, an Iranian photographer who had befriended Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate during the making of the documentary Mia and Roman. He was there to photograph Sharon Tate before she left for Rome the following day. And seeing Manson approach, this Hatami guy goes on the front porch and say, "What do you want?" Manson says, "I'm looking for Terry Melcher." And this Hatami guy doesn't even recognize Melcher's name. And there's no reason he should have. A guy named Rudy Altobelli was the owner, and he rented that house to people. So when Sharon and Roman moved in, they didn't know who the previous renter was. You know, Hatami said, "This is the Polanski residence," and then advised him to try the path to the guest house beyond the main house where the caretaker, William Garretson, was at. Sharon Tate appeared behind this photographer guy in the front door and said, "Who is that guy?" And Manson went back to the guest house without a word, and he returned to the front a minute or two later and left. So Sharon Tate actually saw the guy responsible for those people showing up. That evening, Manson went back to Cielo Drive again and went to the guest house. And he entered the enclosed porch and he spoke with Altobelli, the owner, who'd just come out of the shower. He asked for Melcher. Altobelli felt that Manson was looking for him instead. It was later discovered that Manson had apparently been to the property on earlier occasions after Melcher left. Altobelli told Manson through the screen door that Melcher had moved to Malibu and said he didn't know his new address, although he did. Altobelli told Manson he was leaving the country the next day. Manson said he would like to speak to him when he got back, and Altobelli said, "I'm going to be gone for more than a year." Manson said he'd been directed to the guest house by the persons in the main house. And Altobelli said, "Yeah, don't disturb my tenants." And Altobelli, and then the next day, Altobelli and Sharon Tate flew together to Rome. And Sharon Tate asked him whether that creepy-looking guy had gone to see him. So she had seen the guy responsible for, creepy. Creepy. Jessica Spellbinder says, "I used to live down the street from the LaBiancas. Their house smelled like week old urine." Yes. Let's see. Yes, they mentioned it Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Sure they did. They showed Bruce Dern played George Spahn. Tex Watson, of course, was involved in drug dealing. Oh, sure he was. And he robbed a 22-year-old rival named Bernard Lotzapapa Crow. This is Bernard Lotzapapa Crow. Crow allegedly responded with a threat to kill everyone at Spahn Ranch. And in response, Charlie Manson shot Lotzapapa on July 1st, 1969 at Manson's Hollywood apartment. Manson believed that he had killed this guy, and Manson concluded he'd been shot dead and expected retaliation from the Black Panthers, although this guy wasn't a Black Panther. So he turned Spahn Ranch into a defensive camp, establishing night patrols, armed guards. Yeah. He even brought in members of the Straight Satan's Motorcycle Club to act as security. Oh, but things get better. There's this guy, Just a regular guy, a 34-year-old music teacher, graduate student at UCLA. And he had previously befriended some members of the family and allowed them to occasionally stay at his home in Topanga Canyon. According to Susan Atkins, Manson believed that Gary Hinman here was wealthy, and he sent her and Mary Bruner, mother of his child, and Bobby Beausoleil to Gary Hinman's home to convince this guy to join the family and turn over all of his worldly possessions to Charlie. Because that's what you do when you join a cult, right? No, I'm asking you guys, right? Anyway, those three held this guy hostage for 2 days in late July of 1969. And he kept denying he had any money. I don't got any money. I'm a graduate student of music, of all things. During this time, Manson arrived with a sword and slashed his face and ear. Almost cut part of his ear off, and his jawbone was showing. After that, Bobby Beausoleil stabbed this guy to death on Manson's instructions. Before leaving the residence, Beausoleil and one of the women used his blood to write "Political Piggy" on the wall and to draw a Black Panther symbol. They're trying to make it look like the Black Panthers are killing people to start this race war. Zalipa said Fred Hampton would be a great tell about. I think I did some on Fred Hampton during the COINTELPRO, maybe the Weather Underground. I've covered some of just the assassination of Fred Hampton. I'm not necessarily going to go into the entire events of August 8th, 1969, the Tate LaBianca thing. All I'm going to tell you is this is Linda Kasabian. She became the star witness for the prosecution during the murder trial. She was with Atkins, Krenwinkel, and Tex Watson when they went to Cielo Drive. I think she may have stayed outside. These are the 5 people killed there that night. You see Jay Sebring and Sharon Tate, upper left. Upper right is Abigail Folger, a wonderful person, heiress to the Folgers coffee fortune, and she was volunteer teaching at an inner city school. Didn't have to at all, but she did. Bottom left is Stephen Parent. He was there by accident. He went into the caretaker, William Garretson's dwelling in the back to see about buying a clock radio. The murderers stopped him as he was driving out, and he was shot to death. Wojtek Frykowski is in the lower right, friend of Roman Polanski and boyfriend of Abigail Folger. That man was brutalized. I believe he was stabbed 51 times and shot a few times. Just terrible. There's Sharon Tate. There is Jay Sebring. There is Wojtek Frykowski. And there again is Abigail Folger. And then there's poor Stephen Parent. I'm not going to get into all of that. It's a lot. It's a lot. Charlie sent them there thinking, I think, he asked them to do something witchy. I think he thought maybe Melcher was still there, but he couldn't have because he was told they were no longer there by 2 different people. Who knows what he wanted done? Was it a katana? I thought it was just a regular sword from a scabbard he had gotten from one of the vehicles of the Straight Satans, but I could be incorrect there. Quincy Jones, well-known legendary record producer, was actually supposed to be there that night, but he changed his mind. That's documented. The following night, they went out again. Oh, that's Stephen Parent's car, which was an AMC Ambassador, I want to say. The 4 murderers plus Clem Grogan went out the following night. Clem Grogan was later involved in another family murder. He's out on the streets. He plays guitar in bands in Southern California. He's going by the name of Adam Gabriel now. But he got out, and he is a violent, awful murderer. He's also got an IQ of about 7. He, by the way, if you've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think he's the one that slashes the tires on Brad Pitt's car and gets his butt kicked. This is the LaBianca household, as our good friend Jessica Spellbinder can tell us. I know. She used to live down the street. The LaBiancas were both killed. This is the guy that really got Charlie in trouble. Now, Charlie was probably accessory to murder in all of those other cases, but Charlie was not there, at least as has been factually established, for the previous 2 nights of murders. He may have showed up at the LaBiancas once the murders were done. There's a lot of controversy over whether he was at the Cielo Drive location after those murders were done. However, those are accessory to murder. Good enough for a murder conviction. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just not murder. You didn't physically murder someone. But this guy here, Donald Shorty Shea, was a stuntman at Spahn Ranch. And about 2 weeks after, or maybe a little more, the Tate LaBianca murders, the guys, Manson, Bruce Davis, Tex Watson, and Steve Grogan here, this mental giant, they all asked Shorty Shea, let's go to a nearby car parts yard on the ranch here. The ranch had all sorts of stuff over it, and there was one part of the ranch where they just would take cars they used for things. Sometimes at a movie set like that, they've got cars without engines that sit there and look like they're on a street or whatever. Anyway, long story short, Bruce Davis is in the back seat with Steve Grogan. They hit Shea in the head with a pipe wrench. Tex Watson stabs him. Manson does some stuff to him, and they cut him up in a bunch of pieces, and they find him in December of 1977, which is, 8 years later. Yeah. Multiple stab wounds, blunt force trauma, the whole 9 thing. Now, the family was suspected, Charlie was suspected of ordering a lot of other deaths. Okay. Charlie has taunted people like Sharon Tate's sister with a map of Panamint Range that we're looking at with several crosses on it that were supposed to be buried bodies. They done some excavation at the Barker Ranch, but no bodies have been found. The Barker Ranch is where the family went out in the middle of the desert. I was there before it burned down. The brick parts, the stone parts are still there, but everything else is burned. So it's, but I went there before all that happened, and it was not easy to get to. You had to go up the Goler Wash. It was difficult to get to, but I made it. I could go through. There's a whole bunch of people that were found, and family was never charged. It was this woman's name is Reet Yurvitson. She was found in 1969. 150 stab wounds. She was supposedly a fringe member of the Manson family. This fellow here, Ronald Hughes, was one of the attorneys, and he represented Leslie Van Houten, but he wouldn't do what Charlie told him to do. He was like, nope, I'm not doing that. And Charlie didn't like that one little bit. So there was a 10-day recess in the Tate LaBianca trial in November of 1970. This guy goes supposedly fishing. Big fat guy. Everybody's like, fishing? Why would he go fishing? He never went out in the country. And they found his badly decomposed body in March of 1971, wedged between two boulders. Yes. They think it's because he had stood up to Manson and wouldn't allow his client to take the stand and say Charlie didn't do anything. Prosecutor Stephen Kay said he's on the fence about the family's involvement in Ronald Hughes's death, but family member Sandra Good stated that Hughes was the first of the retaliation murders. So there you go. There was a guy named Lawrence Merrick, an American film director who had directed a movie called Manson, documentary, Oscar nominated. And Sharon Tate was a former acting student, of his. Oh my God, Nick from Fort Wayne, thank you so much. Nick from Fort Wayne has gifted 5 Tom Gulley Show memberships. He's like Fonzie. He's so cool. I saw that the Comets were still in the Turner Cup playoffs. I don't know how. There's a Kelly Cup. I know they were down to Kansas City like 3-1. It didn't look promising, but anyway, this director was shot in the back in the parking lot of his acting school. So the guy who did it had a relationship with the Manson family. And 6 months after the guy who directed this documentary's murder, his sister, topless dancer, was also murdered. And some people think that the Manson family had something to do with that. So anyway, August 10th, the LA County Sheriff's Department, which had jurisdiction in the Gary Hinman case, informed the Los Angeles Police Department detectives of the bloody writing. And then, they caught him because they raided Spahn Ranch because the Manson family had been stealing Volkswagens. Nick, by the way, Nick from Fort Wayne, thank you. I can't thank you enough. I really can't. Sometimes I wish I was living back there in my wonderful little apartment at 1241 Washington, right there after the split, downtown in a big mansion. I loved living in Fort Wayne. I would get up even in the coldest part of the year, and I had street parking, so I'd never want to move my truck. And I would walk from there right when they opened. I think they opened at like 7 a.m. I'd walk all the way down to Fort Wayne's famous Coney Island, and I'd get 4 Conies and a cheeseburger and a thing of chili and walk back, and that would be my breakfast. Oh, God, I love Fort Wayne. And living downtown like that, it was the first year that the Tin Caps new field, it was called Parkview Field at the time, it was their very first year, and they won the championship that year, shattered the Midwest League record for wins and everything else. I would be walking back from the post office, because I walked everywhere back then. I would be walking back from the post office, and I would just see the game and go, oh, a game's about to start, $7. I'm in the front row, third base. Also, Fort Wayne had, Swinney Park. I could go on my jog and jog through Swinney Park. They got a bridge in the back, and it's just, and then they have that Monon Canal Parkway. And I had some friends that lived way down on off of 24 back in a neighborhood. However, if I took that parkway, it was like 7-mile run. I could run all the way over there on that beautiful parkway behind Canterbury High School. And it was wonderful. Run all the way there, hang out with them for a while, whatever. and then maybe just walk back if we ate or so. I love Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne's an amazing town. Anyway, the Mansons were stealing these Volkswagens and then turning them into dune buggies, which is also kind of federal because they did a bunch of stuff in some of the national parks, which wasn't very smart. So there was a raid at the Spahn Ranch where they found all these stolen automobiles. They got in big trouble, right? There was also a raid at the Barker Ranch, the place I told you burned down. Charles Manson had hidden in a cabinet that was used as like a sink basin, and a couple of his hairs were stuck out of it. The arresting officers could not believe that a human could get in that small of a space, but he did because Charlie's absolutely tiny. So, yeah. So he got arrested some more. And that's him after the convictions in 1971. That's actually him because they all went down for murder, for the death penalty. Yeah, they all got the death penalty, but the California Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court did away with the death penalty statute, made it unconstitutional. So he was resentenced to life with the possibility of parole. And that happened in February of 1977, modified to life on February of 1977, even though the decision was in 1972, which I always thought was stupid. They should, if you got the death penalty, it shouldn't be life with the possibility of parole. It should be life without the possibility of parole. But that's why these guys have to keep going to these parole hearings and stuff. So, as somebody was saying in the 1980s, Manson gave 4 interviews to the mainstream media. Now, you got to all know, the first was recorded at California Medical Facility, and it aired June 13th, 1981, and it was by this guy here, one of my idols, absolute idols. Man, if I could be compared to this guy, I'd die a happy man. Tom Snyder. For a little program that he did, and you can see episodes of it. Type in sometime John Lydon or Johnny Rotten with Tom Snyder if you want to see an amazing interview. But there's a lot of amazing Tom Snyder interviews. This is one of them. Yeah, The Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder. The second was recorded at San Quentin State Prison. There you go. And it was with Charlie Rose. Yeah, good old Charlie Rose for CBS News Night Watch. Jessica Spellbinder says, I can compare you to Tom Snyder, Gull Dog. You have the same hairline and penchant for smoking. I don't smoke. Have you seen me smoke? I'd love to be smoking, but I quit. Jessica. And dear golly, every day, like about this time of night, I go, man, I'd love to have I could just buy 1 pack. I could keep it, but I know if I start, I'm a chain smoker. I know I would smoke like crazy again. Tom Snyder. Well, the color teenies. Anyway, by the way, the Charlie Rose one won the National News Emmy Award for Best Interview in 1987. Just joshing you, Big Gull. You're a handsome man. Probably smell of oak. Yes, oak, wood shavings, and leather. Anyway, Charlie Rose gets the Emmy. The third one was with Geraldo Rivera, and it was part of Geraldo's primetime special on Satanism, which I don't know why he interviewed Charlie. Charlie was not into Satanism, but whatever. And then Nicholas Schreck conducted an interview with Charlie for his documentary, Charles Manson Superstar. Schreck concluded Manson was not insane, but merely acting that way out of frustration. Nicholas Schreck is just a D-bag, man. He is so into himself. He is so talentless. But man, does he think he is it. Look at how awful that movie poster is. Seriously, I would have to stay up nights to think of ways making that just, anyway. September 25th, 1984, Manson imprisoned at the California Medical Facility, Vacaville, when inmate Jan Holstrom poured paint thinner on him and set him on fire, causing second and third degree burns on 20% of his body. Holmstrom explained that Manson had objected to his Hare Krishna chants and verbally threatened him. In 1989, Manson was housed in the Protective Housing Unit at the California State Prison Corcoran in Kings County. The unit housed inmates whose safety would be endangered by general population housing. He had also been housed at San Quentin State Prison, California Medical Facility at Vacaville, Folsom State Prison, and Pelican Bay State Prison. In June of 1997, a prison disciplinary committee found that Manson had been trafficking drugs. He was moved from Corcoran State Prison to Pelican Bay State Prison a month later. He was. They did that to him. They did. I have some other slides that they're not letting me show. What a bunch of jerks. Let's see here. In 2013, Manson stated he was a bisexual, saying sex to me is like going to the toilet. Whether it's a girl or not, it doesn't matter. I don't play that guy, girl, S-word. I'm not hung up in that game. In 2014, the imprisoned Manson became engaged to 26-year-old Afton Elaine Burton and obtained a marriage license on November 7th. Manson gave Burton the nickname Star. I spoke to her, by the way, interviewed her. She had been visiting him in prison for at least 9 years and maintained several websites that proclaimed his innocence. The wedding license expired on February 5th, 2015, without a marriage ceremony taking place. Journalist Daniel Simone reported that the wedding was canceled after Manson discovered that Burton wanted to marry him only so that she and friend Craig Hammond could use his corpse as a tourist attraction after his death. According to Simone, Manson believed that he would never die and may simply have used the possibility of marriage as a way to encourage Burton and Hammond to continue visiting him and bringing him gifts. Burton said on her website that the reason the marriage did not take place was merely logistical. Manson had an infection and had been in a prison medical facility for 2 months and could not receive visitors. She said she still hoped that the marriage license would be renewed and the marriage would take place. Manson was denied release at his 12th parole hearing in 2012, which he did not attend. After his March 27, 1997 parole hearing, Manson refused to attend any of his later hearings. The panel at that hearing noted that Manson had a history of controlling behavior, mental health issues, including schizophrenia and paranoid delusional disorder, and was too great a danger to be released. The panel noted that Manson had received 108 rule violation reports, no indication of remorse, no insight into the causative factors of the crimes, lacked understanding of the magnitude of the crimes, had an exceptional callous disregard for human suffering, and had no parole plans. At that 2020 parole hearing, it was determined that Manson would not be reconsidered for parole for another 15 years, not before 2027, at which time he would have been 92. January of 2017, Manson was being held at Corcoran Prison when he was rushed to Mercy Hospital in downtown Bakersfield because he had gastrointestinal bleeding. He was returned to prison 5 days later, and the nature of his treatment was not disclosed. In November of that year, he returned to a hospital in Bakersfield. He died from cardiac arrest resulting from respiratory failure brought on by colon cancer at the hospital on November 19th. 3 people stated their intention to claim Manson's estate and body. His grandson, Jason Freeman, stated his intent to possess Manson's remains and personal effects. His pen pal, Michael Channels, claimed to have a Manson will dated February 14th, 2002, which left Manson's entire estate and body 2 channels. Manson's friend Ben Gurecki claimed to have a Manson will dated January 2017, which gives the estate and Manson's body to Matthew Roberts, another alleged son of Manson. A ton of DNA tests were done around the horn. Kern County Superior Court in California decided in favor of Jason Freeman in regard to Manson's body. A funeral service was held for Manson on March 17, 2018, after which Freeman had his remains cremated and scattered on a California hillside. Other songs have been publicly released other than the Beach Boys one. On March 6, 1970, Lie, L-I-E, an album of Manson music was released. Included Cease to Exist, the one the Beach Boys had recorded. Over the next couple of months, only 300 of the album's 2,000 copies sold. There have been other releases of Manson recordings, both musical and spoken. Of these, the Family Jams, 2 compact discs of Manson's songs recorded by the family in 1970. After Manson and the others had been arrested, guitar and lead vocals are supplied by Steve Grogan, now calling himself Adam Gabriel. Additional vocals are supplied by Squeaky Fromm, Sandra Good, Catherine Scher, and others. The rock band Guns N' Roses recorded Manson's Look at Your Game Girl, included as an unlisted 13-track on their 1993 album, The Spaghetti Incident. My Monkey, which appears on Portrait of American Family by the American rock band Marilyn Manson, includes the lyrics, I had a little monkey, I sent him to the country, I fed him on gingerbread. Along came a choo-choo, knocked my monkey cuckoo, and now my monkey's dead. These lyrics are from Manson's Mechanical Man, which is heard on Lie. Crispin Glover covered Never Say Never to Always on his album The Big Problem, It Does Not Equal the Solution, released in 1989. Musical performers such as Kasabian, Spawn Ranch, and Marilyn Manson derived their names from Manson and his lore. A number of documentaries about Charles Manson. I'm not going to read them to you. They're too many to list. Absolutely too many to list. There's a lot of fiction. The sitcom takeoff on the Ben Stiller show, a sketch series with Manson as a recurring character portrayed by Bob Odenkirk. If you've never seen any of those, they make Manson like Lassie. Manson. It's really funny. It's really funny. The 1976 television drama Helter Skelter is actually very good. Scared the bejesus out of me, and I was a paper boy at the time, so it was in 2 parts, and I watched both parts because I'd read the whole book Helter Skelter by Bugliosi, and I had to get up in the pitch black darkness and go deliver papers. And that was kind of during the time of the Symbionese Liberation Army. And I told you that one guy that was with the SLA grew up in my hometown and his parents lived on my paper route. It was a scary time to deliver papers. Also, ATWA, Air, Trees, Water, Animals, and All the Way Alive, is actually an acronym of an ecological belief system that Charles Manson created. And his associates, most notably Lynette Fromm, still, I believe, maintain that website. So, but there's so many movies and so many documentaries. Yes, the ATWA website still exists. There is a link that just says Manson on it. Manson founded the word ATWA, although he is held as a political prisoner in the United States. Yeah, they're still, their minds are still, eesh. So the website's there, and there's also a blog. And the last entry is March 23rd, 2023. It's called Snitch Jacket. This in reaction to some snitching that has happened recently surrounding the Charles Manson estate trial that's been going on for 5 years. Yeah. So there's still some people that still got kind of a, a thing. And that's really all I have to tell you about Charles Manson. And nobody used the darn link. I put the link up thinking you guys, but nobody used it. Nobody used it. Why do I even use it? Why do I even suffer with StreamYard when nobody uses the link? Why indeed, some would say. I would like to very much thank the chef for $10, Debut Share 3000 for being a member for 2 solid years, Sober as a Judge for the $20 donation. Thank you. Smedrick as well for the $20. I don't know if you guys rush in and then remove them after the show or how that's done. But Lucas Malago with $5. But more importantly, Lucas Malago, he likes and retweets every one of these shows. And a week from today, I will actually cover the Tate LaBianca murders. I don't know if I've done that before, but I'll go into some really deep detail. Have I done the Tate LaBianca moitas? Have I done that on this show? We're to the point now where I don't remember anything that I have no way of remembering what's been done on this program. There's too many topics. This weekend, I will on Sunday do the original Mission Impossible television show. Saturday, right now, it's looking like I might do Chico and the Man. Chico. You know that thing. I'll figure out whether I've done Tate LaBianca. It's no big deal. It's not a big deal. Let's just not put put the pen. It's not a big deal. Jessica Spellbinder says, "I'd love to call in, but I'm busy with these melons. Are you like Mr. Majestic? Is that you like Charles Bronson and Mr. Majestic? I just want to pick my melons." Or do you have big cans? Smedrick says, very interesting episode, Tom. I enjoyed it. Draman's Gooch, are the rumors true of you being a bubble butt patriot? I don't even know what that is, so I'm going to say those rumors are not true. It doesn't sound like, and why would you care? Why would that rumor interest you? Are you that? Why does anything about me interest you? How does that happen? Tell me how that happens. I'd like to know how that happens. No, I haven't, I think, done the Tate LaBianca moitas. I don't believe I've done those moitas. So, let's see here what we got going on. Melon check. Is that like a Polish name? Great show, Tom. Thank you. Thank you, Rich Giraffe. So I think a week from today, I will do the Tate LaBianca moitas. And that will require me to cover some stuff before then that may or may not be moitas. Zalipa says, thank you, and good night, Tom and all. Jessica Spellbinder said, I sit around all day playing with my melons. I don't know what that means. You're being obtuse. I went to the grocery today because I like to go and get set up for like the next week, but particularly the weekend early. Not on Friday, on Thursday. And I went and I did the stuff and I forgot bread. So I have to go back tomorrow. The government gives me money because an ambulance crashed into me head and gave me TBI. I don't know what that means. I don't know what traumatic brain injury, is that it? I don't know. I can't tell. You keep using code words like melons. Don't know. All right. Well, nobody's jumping on. Then I'm going to get out of here. If nobody's going to jump on and talk with me about Charles Manson or anything else. But see, this is what makes me not do shows where people can call in or whatever else, because you do it and then people don't. And it's perplexing. So the hunter would like, says, night, Tom. Good night. Good night. All right. Well, Chico and the Man, maybe, definitely Mission Impossible, the original Mission Impossible. And we'll be talking about my person I met and kind of knew, Peter Lupus. I think he's still alive. Peter Lupus. What is going on with my hair today? I have to look into that. All right. Well, I'm looking at that old clock on the coffee table. It says it's time for me to amscray. You do not have to. Oh, I was thanking people. And thanks to Nick in Fort Wayne very much as well for the 5 gifted memberships. Nick in Fort Wayne's been very, very good to me. So it's very nice. All right. With all that being said, I think the only thing. Wait, no, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And with all that being said, I think the only thing left to say is, and I got a killer song here for you to end the show. I think the only thing left to say is, till next time, we'll see you next time. Jack.
Tom Gulley's here. G-U-L-L-E-Y. He's here to stay. G-U-L-L-E-Y. The Golly guarantee. That's what the people need. We're all here to see Tom Gulley. G-U-L-L-E-Y. G-U-L-L-E-Y. Tom Gulley's here. G-U-L-L-E-Y. He's here to stay. The lights are low, so start the show. Tom's here to go, so let it roll.